is one of the days that we are also going to get a lot of information to help us. And as a faculty, as a department, we have taken it upon ourselves to invite very distinguished personalities. The topic is a very important, trendy, current topic: misinformation and disinformation on elections communication. Recommendations to stakeholders on Ghana's 2024 elections. One will say that the people who should hear this are not here. But I believe that when in this digital age, whenever information is shared, even in the remotest corner, once you put it out there in the digital environment, it spreads faster than you can ever imagine. And we know that whatever is going to happen here is going to be transmitted, it's going to go viral, and soundbite, tidbits, write-ups, quotations will be flying all over the place, so that the people who must hear will actually hear. That UPSA, through the Faculty Guest Lecture Series, is communicating to them. The other aspect of it is that we are contributing our quota to shaping our democratic discourse in this country. And for us, it is very, very important. And this is the contribution of academia towards the growth of communication, media, journalism, democracy, and however you want to look at it. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor of this university, the Pro-Vice Chancellor, the rest of the management team, the faculty management, the heads of department, lecturers, I'd like to welcome all of you here. And I'll just ask that you open your mouth wide and receive a lot of information as possible that will help shape your mindset about the topic in perspective. Now, for students here, it's a learning process. And anytime you gather to learn, you would expect that you'll be taught. I am sure that when you hear the profile of the guest speaker, you'll be impressed. Please, I will advise students that you will squeeze as much information from him as possible. What I mean is that you should ask a lot of questions. The things that are bothering your mind on the topic, that is what you should ask. And when you ask questions, I believe that he is well versed to give appropriate responses that will help shape your views. I'll also ask that you do not get distracted as you are coming in. Don't let anybody engage you in a conversation that will distract you. Please pay attention, be quiet, listen attentively, and assimilate as much knowledge as possible. On that note, I welcome all of you to the 5th Faculty Guest Lecture Series. Please enjoy the rest of the proceedings. Thank you.
Shall we receive to the podium Mrs. Abba Loko, our Director of Public Affairs. Madam Chair, your audience is our chairperson. Thank you.
My work this afternoon is very simple: to sit and also listen to Mr. Kofi Owusu. I believe somebody will introduce him, so I won't take any issues that he will be speaking about, but we are very privileged to have him. I have known him for as long as I have practiced in communications. And we couldn't have asked for a better guest speaker this afternoon, so let's do it for him. The subject matter we are going to be talking about today, I would like to add information to it. Information, misinformation, and disinformation. These three issues have become very topical issues globally, not just in Ghana. In the days when we had just the traditional media, yes, there was misinformation, but the speed at which it traveled wasn't or isn't what we see today. In as much as we are grateful for the social media platforms, we know they come with their own challenges. Just a couple of days ago, and added to it is AI. And so our world has been thrown upside down. Now you can't tell fake news from factual news, unfortunately. I will allow Ms. Owusu to talk to us. And very important is the time in which we find ourselves as a country, the election period. Disinformation, misinformation have turned countries their heads over just by throwing false information out there. A country almost went into extinction. And so I am happy to be here also to listen with rapt attention, and then I will come at the end of it to see if we all were able to listen. And I think we will be, as we say, the source, and then we will deliver the message to the stakeholders who are not here. They are not here, but by the power of the social media and the media, we will transmit whatever salient information we learn today, and we'll be the better for it. Ghana will be the better for it. So thank you, and thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Honorable invited guest and our chairperson, Dean, Vice Dean, HOD IT, and all our dignitaries, former Vice Dean of the department, of the faculty, and all our dignitaries who were able to make it, and you, our cherished students. All right, now I go on to the introduction of our guest speaker. Mr. Albert Kofi Owusu is an accomplished Ghanaian journalist and the general manager of the Ghana News Agency, GNA. With extensive experiences across multiple roles in the media industry, he has built a distinguished career as a reporter, broadcaster, news editor, and programs manager. His leadership has been instrumental in the establishment and growth of several radio and television stations across Ghana, as well as the management of prominent online news platforms. Mr. Owusu received professional training and attachment with the BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation in London, and was later awarded the prestigious Best BBC Journalism Award for West Africa. He currently serves on the Executive Council of the Atlantic Federation of African Press Agencies, FAPA, contributing to the advancement of press agencies across Africa. His expertise has been sought at numerous international media conferences. And in fact, it's not been easy getting him to come today, but he has put aside all other schedules to make time for us. Thank you, Mr. Owusu. He holds a master's degree in business administration, a degree in public administration, and a diploma in journalism. Under his leadership, the Ghana News Agency has regained national recognition, including winning the Ghana Journalists Association Best News Website of the Year in 2020. Mr. Owusu is a staunch advocate for media freedom, and he has spearheaded several initiatives aimed at strengthening journalism and safeguarding press freedom in Ghana. And he is my former boss. In 2003, as a student at the School of Communication Studies, postgraduate student, I happened to do my internship at Joy FM, and he was the news editor there. Ladies and gentlemen, with a clap, with an applause, let us welcome Mr. Kofi Owusu. Thank you so much.
The only way we can achieve development and our aspirations is to go by this multi-party democracy where we have various parties competing for our votes, and whoever gets elected as a president goes there and will rule on our behalf. So if that's the situation, why is there so much enmity between NDC, MPP, and the parties? Why? It's like football. If you support Man U, I support Man City, we shouldn't be fighting. We have our teams to support our teams. When you score my team, well, I'll feel sad, but that's it. But we take political issues like life and death, to the extent that in the last elections, you heard it, 8 people died, were shot to death. Why? Question we should be asking ourselves, and question that you as upcoming communication specialists or practitioners, you must be thinking about to try and educate our citizens that you don't need to fight over politics. You don't need to fight over which party gets to win elections and go into parliament or get into presidency. In Teshiman, what happened there? You go and vote your election, you go and cast your ballot, you go home. But in Ghana, we have been trained, our youth, the men, the women don't usually do that, but even though I see women also participating. You've been trained that when you cast your vote, don't go home, stay and watch the ballot because somebody will steal it. And they hang around. When they're told to move away, they keep surging forward, and then soon there's clashes. You have clashes between security forces and people who are watching them. I was in Germany to observe the elections some years back, and I was amazed. On the day of election, the electoral officers are retired school teachers, retired headmasters, nurses, who have time to sit the whole day and give you the ballot to go and cast. People just walk in there, take your ballot. No policeman, nobody. Because they understand what it means. Same in the US, other places. Only in Africa, we see politics as life and death. And then our politicians will lead the way and we follow them. It's amazing. We as communicators, we should educate our citizenry not to do that. Because, anyway, I don't want to get distracted. Let's go. Yeah, so much enmity between, citizens and all that. Then also, misinformed decision making. If you don't get the right information, people depend on the news they receive to make their decisions in life. Which school to attend. You get to know that UPSA is running a course that you want to join or enroll in, then you come. Because if you don't hear it, you cannot decide. And that's how people trust the medium that they receive information from. But because of misinformation, now it's really scary what news you should accept and believe in. That is also affecting us. And then the manipulation, propaganda, I mentioned earlier, fake news, false information, which can be exploited as a tool for manipulation, propaganda. Now, I pulled this slide from an Afrobarometer survey that showed people's attitudes towards institutions. It's very interesting when you have time. This one was about people's trust in state institutions and even, state institutions. And it shows everything there. You can see, can you see from the far back, the names here? Okay, I can mention some of them for you. Ghana Armed Forces, religious bodies, traditional leaders, courts, Electoral Commission, President, New Patriotic Party, Parliament. There's supposed to be another party here, but they made a mistake. Police, Ghana Revenue Authority, assemblymen, assemblywomen, they are also not left out. People don't trust them. And it shows there. The blue part that you see represents those who say they trust these categories of persons or institutions. The light blue part, they say somewhat. Then as you go further, the orange or pink side, they said, no, not just a little. The red, they don't trust them at all. That is the state in which we have this 2022. There's a new one, 2024. I couldn't get it, but you can look out for it. Afrobarometer survey on Ghana. You'll find out how citizens express their trust of institutions. Now, if you notice that EC, which is a critical stakeholder in election this year, has only 10% of people who say they trust the commission. Question is why? Then you look at the presidency. This is not a presidency, it's a presidency. So the presidency, 14%. Parliament, 8%. If you watch what was happening a few days ago, you can tell. Yeah, even yesterday, thank you. And the police as well. GRE, Revenue Authority. Assemblymen, the ones who are with us, and the women. MMDCs, and so that sort of thing. This tells you the state of Ghana, how people perceive these institutions. And a lot of that has to do with the information they receive about them. Take, for example, the EC. Every election year, opposition political parties, particularly the main ones, is either MPP or NDC. They are so skeptical of the EC. And sometimes, yes, there may be some issues to point out, but as the EC always says, whatever errors that they detect, they correct them before election day. And we are in Ghana where we've had 8 successful elections where power has transferred from one party to the other. And yet, every election, the party in opposition will be at war with the EC. It's not just this year. 2016, the EC chair at the time also had her fair share of attacks from the opposition there, which now is the incumbent party. So if you are citizens and you hear this and you see these things here, you have to start thinking. If you're a media person, you must start thinking that something is not quite right. If the referee, the EC that is organizing the elections, is not trusted, based on what you hear. If you ask somebody, because you don't work, those who say they don't trust the EC, they don't work at the EC. They don't interface with the EC. They don't interact with the EC. And yet they say they don't trust the EC. So where do you think they got information from? From the news. From the news. And they believe it. Or from utterances by some political actors. And they believe that. And sometimes you hear people say, if Ghana bans, it's the EC's Jim Mensah, she's the one who will be responsible. They say it. People believe that. And I have to say, and I have to admit, that our media folks are also guilty. Very guilty, because the credible media houses, if a politician comes to your studio and makes such unsubstantiated pronouncements, you must take the person on to prove what they're saying. You don't let them go. Sometimes you hear the person say, next week I'll give the evidence. You let me say it, I'll give the evidence. And then he goes scot-free. But it's wrong. So the media institutions are to blame a lot. We give them the platform. We do. And that's why, for some of us, and Doc Amamkwa will tell you, Doc Adjoa will tell you, we try to look for well-trained media practitioners or communicators. So students, as you are here, just aim to be excellent, to go beyond what others are doing. Because you have to have a critical mind to analyze things and be bold to question things. If a politician says EC is corrupt, EC is doing certain things to hand power to party A, and without any basis, you let the person go scot-free, you are helping the person to spread disinformation. That's what it is. And we hear it all the time. So that's it. As for the police, you know already, they've never been liked for so many years. The courts too have also come in. The courts are the place where people go when they have electoral issues. They go to the court to seek their whatever, a petition, take the petition to court to seek redress. If they say they don't trust the courts, all of this will lead to chaos. If people don't trust the police, they don't trust the court, they don't trust the EC, they don't trust the political parties, they don't even trust the chiefs. Maybe because of Galamsey, they don't trust the chiefs. They don't even trust the religious leaders. It's frightening. If we don't take care to arrest some of these, we'll be heading towards a very dangerous place. So this one even brings it in perspective. 2022, and the decline is from about 2 decades of research. This is 2022, and you see, presidency has declined 21%, negative 21%, 14% as it is. They are all declining in terms of perception. So it means that people who said they didn't trust the presidency, now is even worse. Those who said they didn't trust parliament, now is even worse. Courts, it is just going down like that. The chief 5%. You know, this is worrying. So Ghanaians don't believe them. I mean, we the people, we are saying we don't trust these people. And why? Because of the information we get. Because many of us here, we don't deal, maybe the police, you deal with that because the police will cost you and you know what happens. So you can say the police, there's harm out here. But with parliament, with the presidency, with assemblies, and particularly the EC. That's where the trouble is. So imagine that people now believe, some people, depending on where you go, people say, as for this election, dear, this party, they are finished. Party B, all the way. They believe it. They believe it. Some say it's possible, some say reset. Now, just imagine those who have been made through the campaign, disinformation all along, to believe that their party is coming to power. If on election day, after the elections, the ballots have been counted, and Jim Mensah comes out and says that, contrary to what you were expecting, Party A won the election. And then the candidate who had been saying that, I'm promising you, I'm coming to power, if he says, I won't accept it, there was rigging, you imagine what will happen. The thugs will all follow this party. And before long, the streets will be filled with chaos and violence. I have friends in the US and UK who told me that they're not coming down for Christmas this year because of elections. Why should that be the case? And we are causing that. The media is playing a role as well. So this is where we are. If you ask somebody, who do you think is going to win? Depending on how the person has been fed information, he or she will say, oh, Baumianeko. Another person will say, no, this one there, it's Mahama, we're coming back. So the question is, if voting day happens and the results are counted and it doesn't go the way you expected, would you accept it based upon the trust issues here? We have bastardized the EC so much, not just this year, 2016, 2008, back and forth. I mean, it's been a trend that the media should be very savvy and pick that on and define institutions. I'm not saying if there's anything wrong, we shouldn't point out. If there are wrong things, we should point them out and correct them, which sometimes is the case. But in the main, you listen to radio discussions on the P stations, and people are saying outrageous things. And they don't bring proof. I can tell you, and Doc is here, in our time at Joy, we had one of the most fantastic presenters you can ever find, Komla Dumont, may his soul rest in perfect peace. We did a lot of production work before a guest would come to the studio the next morning. The topic for discussion, we have at least 2 producers who would have done a lot of research before the guests will come to the studio. You don't come and sit there and say things and go scot-free. We will query you, we will ask you to produce evidence. The same thing with the news as well. We don't just listen to you, you say things and you go your way. And a typical thing I always say is that some of my colleagues with the account stations, they have all that they want to win to get listeners, and they call it ratings, because you need to get audiences so that you can go and sell to advertisers and make money. The market is very bad. They have NDC candidate here, NDP candidate here. Forget about CVP and PNC, they don't matter. NDC person will say something, then the host who's supposed to be a trained presenter or journalist will only turn the mic to the other person. What do you also say? Also, what do you also say? Then they encourage him to fight. There's no education. One person can speak for 25 minutes and they'll be fighting over time. My time is too small. No. And how are you informing the public? And people are consuming this. So we, the media, are to blame as well. And some of my friends who are lawyers, doctors, they see me and they say that your people, you are going to let Ghana down. And I tell them that it's because some of us are not well trained. That's a fact. Some of the people who are in the media houses, they're not even journalists. They're not even trained like you guys are doing here. That's why we want you to be trained and come and take up those jobs. I thought you would like that. Yes. You should learn hard, and this time you have opportunities. In our time, we didn't have some of these things that you are now exposed to. Learn hard, get all the skills you need, go out there and fight for the jobs and do better and prove to the media owners that you are more trained, you are professionals. Because the kind of stuff that people are dishing out in the name of media is outrageous, very outrageous. Let's go. Okay, so election communication is all about the information you receive, the advertisements, the campaign posters, the discussions you hear on the radio, you see on TV, all of that. Voter education, EC does that a lot, telling people how to vote, how to go and check their names on the register, all of that. If you see election management bodies, that's the EC, still communicating important information to about the electoral process. Yes. And the media as well, we play our role. The discussions, the reports, we carry radio, TV, online, and all that. Public relations, this will involve political parties and even EC, where they have to respond to some of these cases of disinformation and quickly explain matters to the publics. Now, recommendations. From the discussions, and we said a few things, you should know what to do. I mean, the EC, I think, does a fairly good job of educating the public, getting adverts out there, meeting journalists, explaining at press conferences. They do that. They update. And in 2020, the EC did something I thought was very, very remarkable. Because of the criticisms that were coming at the EC, Jean Mensah adopted a style. She called it, "Let the citizens know." And for any little information or accusation that will come from the opposition party, she will call a press conference and tell the journalists the true state of the situation. And that was quite helpful to keep people's pressure down. And then voter education, that is also the EC's job to do. Election officials should be willing to use every tool available to deliver information to the public. They should know the media and how to respond to the media, how to be quick and alert to address some of the misinformation going on there. And I mentioned it that in 2020, as I said earlier, the reports of ballot papers that were being burnt and all of them, some of them were false. EC reacted to that as well. And I said, where EC officials see that there's a mistake on their part, they have to admit it. There's nothing about integrity. When you are wrong, you say that, you apologize, you do better, people believe you. But when there is clear evidence of something that has gone wrong and you deny, you then tend to lose credibility there. So I said they should be honest and friendly. That's for the EC officials, and try to accommodate reporters' inquiries. And that's it. Apologize about that. EC officials must always remember they are speaking to the public. They're not speaking to the opposition. You've seen a lot of running battles between the opposition, NDC, and the EC. Because they have what you call the inter-party dialogue committee, where all parties will send their reps to go and discuss things. But sometimes discussions don't go the way they should, and you find people going to demonstration and all that. All of that, the EC has to accommodate that, because all the parties are stakeholders in the exercise. You can't have one party staying out of the exercise and saying that I don't believe you, I don't trust you, so will not take part. That is also tantamount to chaos. Imagine that one party pulls out and says, we're not going to do this election because the EC is in cahoots with the incumbent to dupe us or to rig elections. That's going to spell trouble. But then again, if the citizens are well informed, they can check some of these cases of misinformation and disinformation. I mentioned the let the citizens know that the EC introduced in 2020 to deal with some of these cases. Let's go. The media also has a role to play. I'm not going to read everything. The media, as we know, need to train its staff in election reporting, do refresher courses, know how to report right to its audience. The media owes it to the public. There's something we call public trust. We are in the media because we've got the licenses to operate and provide information to our audiences. We owe it to you or to our audiences to be credible, to be truthful. But I have to say, it's not the case in many instances. If you check, we have the National Communications Authority, NCA. That is the institution that grants licenses to businessmen to operate radio stations and TV stations. At the last check, the NCA has granted over 700 radio licenses to business people to operate radio stations. And out of that, over 500 radio stations are operating across the country. Now, Ghana is a small market. I can tell you that many of the radio stations are suffering. And that's another reason why some of them cannot afford to recruit professionally trained journalists like you. They can't afford. So they just go for people who are, from the mushroom institutions all over. They don't know much about journalism, but because they will not demand any significant salary, they take them. Some of them are not even trained at all because they can speak the language, and it's always there, Akan. They can rattle it so well, then they find themselves as presenters, and people call them journalists, but they're not journalists. They're not, and because the owners also can afford to recruit well-trained journalists, they just take them. And then these persons will go and sit on radio and have the microphone and will be speaking to prof and heads of departments and people who are learned. Back at Joy, I always used to tell my colleagues who were on radio, Kojo Pong and the rest of them, that when you have the privilege to sit in the studio with a microphone, you should know that there are about 1 million or more of people out there who are more knowledgeable, smarter than you in the studio. So whatever you say, they have the luxury to listen and analyze. And sometimes they can tune out of your station and not come back again. So if you're a radio station owner, you stand the risk of losing your business because you put people who are not well informed, well educated to communicate to the audience, and members of the audience are smarter than those who are in the studio. You lose them. Anyway, so these are the media roles they should play: balance and impartiality, fact-checking mechanisms. The media play that role. We get information, we don't rush, like the gentleman who posted a story of the contaminated blood sample. We have to go and do cross-checking before you put information out there. The parties also owe it to themselves to make sure they educate the citizenry so they know they can really determine for themselves which party has the best policies for them and to cast their ballots based upon the information they have. That is also their job to do, political parties. We have civil society organizations and NGOs who also come in to play their role, and you hear all of them: CDD, Imani, IDEC, IEA, they're all there, and schools as well. Communications department can also do the same thing. In fact, actually, you hear them often also making such pronouncements, urging the various actors to play by the rule. These days of technology, there are people now who are calling on tech owners like Facebook, Twitter, and the rest of them to also be mindful. They cannot say that in the name of freedom of expression, people can just put anything that is not true on their platforms. They have to also be mindful of checking some of the falsehoods that are spread on their platforms that can cause disturbances in countries. And the general public, citizens themselves are also the front lines of combating misinformation. When you hear any piece of information that is very doubtful or that's a bit strange, don't just believe it and share like you do with WhatsApp. You just get a Snapchat or WhatsApp that you share. You just share. We don't check it, But the way you know that if somebody sends you a video of child pornography, children engaged in sexual acts, you know that it's a crime. Do you know that's a crime? And if you share this material and it gets into the hands of the law officers, they can trace the sharing right down to whoever in the chain spread that one, and you'll be in trouble. So when your friend or anybody sends you any pornographic material that is about children, delete it. Don't pass it on. Don't pass it on. Be very smart. Otherwise, you could be in trouble. I know some of our people, they like that. They like to, you see some things, they are happy. You're very happy. You're in danger of, landing in the hands of the police. So be careful with that. Security services as well, they have their role to play. Again, 2020, we saw what happened. I'm sure we'll see the same thing because the tension is there. People are scared that from the pronouncements of the political actors, people believe that there's going to be violence. I hope not. We pray not. Because already times are hard. We don't want to see things going. And these days, if you fight in a country, nobody will come and rescue you. You fight till you die, and then they'll come and pick up the, so you're on your own. You're on your own. So we, the citizens, we don't have to sit back when you know that your friend is engaged in something that is not right. Point it out to them. I mean, I wish that people in election year will not respond to calls to go and demonstrate because the election didn't go their way. You go and cast a vote, you go home. Cast a vote, you go home. After all, when the party wins, I don't know whether they start money in your pocket or whatever. So you just go and follow, and you are shot to death, or you get wounded or something. For what? We should think, we should be smart. We want multi-party democracy. We have to let our political parties know that we don't want violence. We don't want them to fight to just come and serve us. You say they want to come and serve us, and they are fighting and killing and slashing themselves to come and serve us. Why? That's something that we should be pondering for a long time. Let's go. So there are other support services that also come in to help. We have them. The NCC does education all year round. When they have the budget to do that, they also say they don't have budget. They have challenges. We have, I mentioned the CSOs who also come in. The think tanks, Imani, CDD, the rest of them, they also come in because they get funding elsewhere to do some kind of education to get the citizens involved in the democratic process. When citizens refuse to take part in the democratic process, it means that there's trouble. When Ghanaian citizens say, we don't trust this anymore, we don't trust EC, we don't trust the presidency, we don't trust all of you, we don't trust you, we won't take part, we won't vote, that is trouble, that's chaos. So all of those actors, the political parties, the EC, the media, the presidency, all of them owe it to themselves to get us well educated so that we'll be part of this democratic process. If not, we are in trouble. And then some of us too have been calling for military coups to come and clear these people away. I know it sounds fresh. In just about a couple of years now, we've had about 6 coups up north, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, all of them. Initially, people were happy because when you hate your enemy and you see somebody dealing with him, you're happy. But it's momentary because the military don't know how to govern. They know how to get things done, buga buga. And when they are in control, after a while, they start thinking, how do we push resources here? How do we fix? How do we pay nurses? How do we pay teachers? How do we do this? How do we do roads? That is something that they are not trained for. And soon they find themselves in that difficulty and citizens begin to rebel. When you talk and it's a military person in charge, they'll come to your door and snap you. That's when you know that there's a difference between democracy and military dictatorship. So never support the calls for military to come in, never. It's not a good thing. We rather should be part of this democratic process and push our MPs, our MCEs, our ministers and whoever they are to do the right thing. If citizens are educated, they do the right thing, politicians will not take them for granted. It's because they know that you don't know the issues. So these are some of the things that we recommend to stakeholders. And I think citizens have mentioned already what we too should also be engaged in. Can you go? Now, the last slide I want to show you how to identify fake news and disinformation. I said it already. Verify the source. Check if the source is a reputable and trustworthy organization. Look for well-established news organization. Even this one is not enough. I told you about how the Joy News that was carried, reported on the ballot papers that had been thrown away, turned out to be false. And there have been some of these false reports, not intentionally, I must say. And when it happens, they retract and apologize. But there are some that deliberately spread disinformation. I was telling you about the stations we have, radio stations, 500 of them. 500 stations, more than that. Many of them, I'll not say majority, many of them are owned by politicians. Many of them. You know some of them. Now, if a politician owns a radio station, tendency is that they're going to do the bidding of the politician. So you who consume news, you must know which sources you listen to. Listen to all of them, but you have to be very smart to analyze and evaluate the information you get from the station, because not all of them are objective. They come in at an angle. There's no law against it. They preach what the party wants them to toe, the line they want them to toe. That's what they do. But you are the one listening to them. You must decide based upon their programming, the things that go on in the station. You can tell that, no, if I want credible information, I must go to this station. If I want that, I must go to that station. And it's clear. And that is why, for me, as a practitioner, when I have to interact with students of communication, I'm so happy because we are getting more institutions training young people in communication so they will be smart. And you cannot have any excuse. You cannot have any excuse. If you've been to this school, when you come out and in the world of work, you come and say that you're from UPSA, there's a respect for you. And we expect that will also play when you're working. So check that, evaluate the headline, examine the content, look for support, evidence, facts, and quotes from credible sources within the article, cross-reference with other sources. It's a habit that I've acquired over the years. When I pick a news item, international news item, I go to BBC, I go to Reuters, I go to CNN, I go to Al Jazeera to make sure I get a gist of the story. I don't just stick to one source. You must get a site or a source that will corroborate what you picked up. So it's very important. Trust, expertise, and authority. Use critical thinking, apply critical thinking skills. Ask yourself questions about the information presented. Is there a clear bias? Does it seem to be promoting an agenda? Critical thinking helps you discern the truth from falsehood. All right, so in conclusion, we say that effective elections communication is crucial for transparency, fairness, and the smooth functioning of a democratic process. It helps voters make informed decisions, promotes participation, and ensures the integrity of elections. And as we approach the December elections, addressing the challenge of misinformation and disinformation must be a shared responsibility. It's not just for the practitioners, for political parties, for the media, but for all of us as citizenry. It is incumbent upon all stakeholders, from the Electoral Commission and political parties to media houses and every citizen, to ensure that truth prevails over falsehood in our elections. That's the only way that we can ensure this country stays on the path that we've chosen. Thank you very much.
If I have my own way,
the commentary or this.
Okay, so my question is, I really want to appreciate your lecture. I think I really enjoyed it because I learned a lot. And I don't know if I should call it a question or a suggestion, because I realize sometimes our politicians go online to just say things without any authority. Sometimes you can see they are really telling lies. It's not true. They can actually say false information about the other party with no evidence. So I think it seems our country is not really taking legal action towards these people. That is why they keep doing it. So, so do you think in this case, would it be the fault of the media or our legal personnel? Because it seems they keep doing it because they are not arrested. Yeah.
To add to the earlier submission from my sister, how is the legal system sort of making facilitation to combat this menace? To also add is the new media, because as much as the traditional media now, we know that some politicians and some businessmen have access to these institutions. The media houses they also have extensions on these social media platforms. And so if I don't hear it on the radio or I don't see it on the TV, I might have seen it on their social media platform. So how are legal systems combating that? The second thing is also how the educational system is making provisions for media literacy, particularly for tertiary institutions and for a program like this as we are running. So these are the two questions I'd like to ask.
Statements made on radio stations or by the political actors, there are laws, there are actually laws for defamation. I mean, and there have been cases where some people have gone to court, sued, and they've won with hefty sanctions. But for me as a practitioner, and I say that the platform on which they make such pronouncements is where we can address that. So the education goes out there for the public to know as well. So there are some stations that I will not listen to, or if I do just for the theatrical effect, entertainment, because there's somebody there that I tend to like the person, the way he or she talks about certain things. But if you want credible news, and back to your point, if the media, I said it in my presentation, if the presenters, the journalists who host some of these discussions or interview some of these persons, if they know their job, they won't let them go lightly. They will question them. Because if somebody makes a pronouncement about a situation and you don't believe it, you ask the person to make to prove to you. And that's why you are benefiting from this training, because you get to a point, if journalists are well trained, nobody can speak to them and get away without any checks. Because elsewhere that I know, journalists come out, they know much about the economy they're operating in, they know about the political systems, they know a bit about legal issues. So when they're talking to you, they are knowledgeable. They are knowledgeable. You cannot just say anything and they go away. And the one that even kills us is the journalist who only reports that he said. We need journalists who are analytical. So when somebody makes a statement that you know is false, you take them on. You ask them to prove it. At least I know that one of my friends, Sefakai on radio, he won't let you go scot-free. He will ask you to produce evidence. There are many stations. If you go to City, you go to Joy, you go to TV3, Metro. There are journalists who are well trained, who maybe have been around longer, so they're not intimidated by the politicians and they can question them. As for the law, when you fall into it, you are in trouble. So the laws are there. When somebody defames you, even though we don't have the criminal libel law, but we have the civil libel law that you can fall on and they can be dealt with. I know some newspapers that were forced out of business because they couldn't pay some of these fines that were handed down to them. So it comes back to the training for the media practitioners and the training for the citizenry as well. I hope I've answered the questions for you, or there's more. You want them to be arrested? There is what you call freedom of speech. If, you know, I have lawyers who say that if somebody insults another person, any other person, there's no way you can take the person to court. There is nothing. You saw how previous, I don't want to go into politics, but if somebody will say somebody's incompetent, another person says somebody is whatever, they make all these statements out there. If you feel you are maligned, you can go to court and deal with that. But often, I would deal with the media aspect. If the media will play their role very well, it can put a curb on some of these pronouncements. Okay? As for the second question about the training institution, I'm sure Prof will handle it much better than I will, because that's what you're doing here, training you, equipping you with the knowledge so that you can be out there and be very scrutinize some of these issues.
My name is P. Ramadi, a final year student of UPSC Public Relations. I wanted to find out if by any chance there are like foreign influences on the information or how information is disseminated, and how we can combat like the foreign influence. Thank you.
I skipped that. You know, there was a time, I think in the US elections of 2016, there were reports that suggested that Russia was interfering with the electoral process to skew things like that Trump would win. Yes, foreign interferences can be there. In actual fact, look, here in Ghana, not just now, it's been a situation. Foreigners come, they study the situation, they can tell based upon the analysis, comments from citizens that this party is going to lose the elections. So they have interest. Don't forget, they have interest in your resources. So what really happens sometimes, these foreigners, entities, would support a party that they know is going to win, in the hope that if the party wins, then they come in, they get some fantastic deals going. It happens all over the place. So foreign influences are there, they are real. But as I always say, you cannot control what somebody else will do, but you can control how you react to that influence coming to you. And that's why we keep on harping on the stakeholders, harping on the media, the critical role the media plays. For me, that is where it is, because people feed they get information from the media. And you said, the gentleman said, now the new media, they go there as well. I said earlier, the traditional media houses have also gone there as well. Graphic, Times, Metro TV, Joy, they are all there. Now, they can be traced. If Graphic, the story that I showed you, a story from Graphic which is online, it's the same Graphic that puts a story online. Same, Joy, Major Online, Ghana Web, all of them. So you, the person looking for information, you must trust the source. If the source is not trustworthy, then you know that you don't have to believe in that. But those that are credible, they are responsible as well, and they are accountable for whatever they put out there. And those are the ones that can be dealt with. If you talk to the National Media Commission, which has some oversight responsibility for the media operations, they'll tell you that the internet is an area where they have no control. The NMC can shut down a radio station, can close a newspaper house or a TV station because they have control. They can go to them, they have a physical address. But on the internet, how do you arrest the person? It is something that has been under discussion for a while, how to effectively police the internet, at the same time not to be seen to be clamping down on free speech. In China, where I was recently, they don't mess with those things. The Chinese have a firm grip on the internet. You cannot post anything anyhow and sleep, because you know what happens there. Their democracy is kind of different from ours. It's not about free speech, free speech. You do anything, they'll get you. So people have taken liberties here in our parts of the country because of free speech. You can say anything. No, but a time will come, I'm sure, that authorities will figure out how people can be held responsible. The gentleman who posted the blood bank story, the blood things on the Facebook, that person today will be arrested. And I think there'll be a few cases where people are arrested for posting some stories on the internet and they thought you could go scot-free. And that's why I said to you that when you share a material that is seen to be illegal on WhatsApp or Snapchat, you should be careful. Because one person receives a pornographic material that involves children and the person reports to a police officer, you will be in trouble. It's a serious offense, so I have to repeat that. The young ones among you who tend to like these things, you share them, be very careful. Because if the law gets hold of you, they'll deal with you. So you can bear that in mind. Thank you.
Yes. A lot of theoretical presentations about the issue, but my problem is, or my question for you is, what two measures have you put in place as a media personnel to solve this problem of misinformation and disinformation in the public, because you reach the greater public than most of us? Thank you.
Like I said, none of us is immune to this menace. We all fall, now and then in the practice, because there's an adage that the person who goes to fetch the water is the one who will tend to break the pot. Even at GNA, we have, and we've always had, a rigorous system of cross-checking stories. We receive stories from all over the country. We have editors, we call them first editors, who check the stories from the region before it gets to the head office. When it gets to the head office, there are editors on the editing bench who go through. If there are issues they find it funny or find it suspicious, they will contact the first editor or the reporter who found the story. It goes through stages, so it's a rigorous system. Even that, sometimes stories pass through that are false. I'll give an example. My own agency. We had a stringer somewhere in, I think, 2nd D. In 2020, the gentleman filed a story that said that the fishing community in 2nd D, they were very angry with the government at the time because of premix. The fisher folk, they use premix for their canoe business. And there were some issues going on there in terms of sharing, and what we do. We human beings, we Ghanaians, we like to do things. You put somebody in charge, the person will look for corners to cut and all that. So the fishing community, the members were not happy with the government. And then they had a forum where they swore that they were going to vote en bloc against the party in government, that was MPP. But the story that the reporter filed was false because The headline said about 3 million voters in Second D will vote against the NPP. 3 million voters. Now, any rookie journalist knows that 3 million voters cannot be from Second D. How many do we vote? How many voters are there if you count? With a population of 30 million or so, we have 18 million voting population. Bring it down. If the whole country have 3 million in Second D alone, just extrapolate and see. It's not true. It wasn't true, of course. So the Minister for Information, Kofi Owusu, then saw the story. It had been published. And he sent it to me and he said, Kofi, look at this. And I said, well, I know that the fishing community there were not happy with the government. And he said, yes, it's true. But 3 million? And that was just so much an exaggeration. So that's a mistake out there. Even when we have the gatekeeping role that we make sure to check stories, somehow these things slip through. But the good thing is that when you detect the anomaly, you fix it easily. You fix it. In terms of what we can do practically, I said it in passing that as a media organization, be it private or public, you owe it a duty to the public to be credible, to give them the right information, because people base their decision making on the information you give them. If tomorrow you hear that there's going to be an increase in electricity tariffs, you know that you're going to pay more electricity tariffs. You know, and you will have to base your decision on that, whether you're going to do what you're going to do about it. If you hear that schools are going to reopen next week, it's information that you have to work with and all that. So it is true that we have a role to play as a media. And what I have done over the years, the media houses I've been with, we've done, is to earn the credibility. Because as a media organization, if you lose the credibility, you are done. It is your premium that you take to market, that people believe in your story. If you take graphic and you read graphic, you tend to believe the story that they put out there, because over the years, they have distinguished themselves as a credible media outlet. Do you get it? Those that are not credible, unfortunately, the market will deal with them. I mentioned to you also that there are some media houses that are owned by politicians. And a politician buys a media institution for their own interest. And they won't come and tell you the story as it is. They will tell a story which is skewed in their favor. So that is going to happen. You're going to have, it's a free market after all. So you, the consumer of the news, you have to decipher which ones to believe in. And in the media, well, what we can do is do our best to report to the consumers, to report to the audiences and get you to believe in us. There are some people who will say that if I don't get a story from this particular institution or outlet, I won't believe it. So when they even hear a story somewhere, they go and check from that source. You get. So, but the only thing that you can talk about is the NMC as well. I know that, the NMC, the National Media Commission, they have that regulatory powers. There have been a few cases where they've gone to some radio stations and TV stations, and they have actually dealt with the issue when the complaint was received by them. That is the regulatory organization that plays that role. And except that, if a media organization does anything that is illegal, whoever feels maligned by their reporting can take legal action against them. It's a bit, the way the nature of the media environment is such that because our constitution grants freedom of expression, freedom of association, and all that. So anybody can start broadcasting. In fact, today, with the new media that the gentleman mentioned, we have young guys who are making money off the new media platforms. They listen to discussions on radio, on the traditional radio stations, they record, whether it's video, and then they come back, edit it, and put it out there, and they are running commentary. And people watch them, and they're making money off that. So many out there, they're doing that. So the information is just flowing. That's why we said that in this day and age, with the platforms we have, information is moving so fast, too fast for the NMCs and the NCAs to catch up with them, too fast. The only thing you can do is go the China way, I told you. And the China way too, we won't like it. Because China, they don't brook opposition elements. You cannot do anything like that. So I get that's a challenge. And that's why institutions like yours we treasure what you're doing because you are pumping ideas, the good stuff in the heads of these youngsters. So when they go out there, they will know what to do. So it's education that will help. Education. The government cannot do much unless they fall foul of the law, they take them on. Why do they do that? Imagine. Recently, sorry, I'll come to you. Recently, some radio stations were shut down because they hadn't paid their spectrum charges and all that. The information that came out was that a political action against them. Meanwhile, it could be true, it could also be untrue. But BBC said the government has shut down radio stations. And the station owners were saying, because we are against the party, that's why they're doing this to us. So you cannot really tell. It's difficult to really regulate the media environment. It's difficult. It's tough. The only thing that will help is the education that goes out there, is the training of the practitioners, so that we can set the good ones from the bad ones. If radio stations and TV stations will employ the right persons who are well trained and also train them, all of these things will die out. Those who continue to churn out the bad stuff, they will lose the business. Because if I go to the market to go and look for adverts, the person coming to place adverts on my radio station or TV station want to see how many people listen to you or watch your TV station. There's a survey that we get that will show how many people listen to this station or watch this TV station. And that is what you use to sell to get money. If you don't get money, you can't run your business. It will collapse. So it has a checks and balances, in some form. The only way we can do is a democratic state. People can do anything they want to do. Today, you can set up a radio station, buy your license, start a station, you're broadcasting music or doing religious broadcasts or anything.
The communication studies department. You made mention of the fact that the bad ones, they will be dealt with by the market. So I would like to come back to the very first student that asked the question. Can't we just set a legal framework by which these bad ones will be dealt with, not the market? Because you even said politicians can even buy media house and then put anything out there. Can there be a legal framework that when your platform is used to put out unsubstantiated allegations, then the law will deal with it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. In terms of the law, there are laws. And I said earlier that some people have been sued and they received some hefty fines. Some newspapers have collapsed because they couldn't pay the fines and all that. So there are laws. But, as I said, there is free speech. The Constitution grants free speech. And the sensitive thing is, what is free speech? If somebody says a certain person is incompetent, is it an attack on the person or the person expressing the way he or she sees the person's performance? If somebody says that Mr. A has defiled a 4-year-old child, that's an allegation. The person can be taken on for saying that. The legal evidence is there. If you say that about somebody and it's not true, the person can go to court and you and the institution which allowed you to make that statement will be held liable. There are cases like that in the courts, I know. So if anybody feels aligned, the person can be maligned, the person can take the legal course, it's there. But what I hear you referring to is, for example, in this particular season, if somebody goes to sit on a radio station and say something like, you listen to them. They make statements that they cannot back them up, but at the same time, it's not something that you can easily trap them and say, aha, macho, we do work hard. You cannot. It's a bit dicey. So as I said, for our environment, we have the National Media Commission, which does a pretty good job of checking that. If they get a complaint, they go on. There was recently a case involving one of the TV stations, I think Onya or so, where one of the presenters was said to be making some very serious statements that were bordering on indecent, language and all that. NMC came in to deal with it. Do you get? So, to go the way that we would want. I know how you feel about it. They'll go the China way. They'll close down the station. You won't even get a chance to even broadcast as a private station or private newspaper. Many of the media houses in China are owned by the state. And the stories that they put out there is praising the government, and everybody's happy. I was in China and I asked them about their private media, and they said, well, if my government provides education for my kids right from kindergarten to university, provides good health care, provides roads, provides accommodation and all that, there isn't much that I really want anyway. So they don't care much about that. A few radicals are there though, but in the main, people are happy. They're doing their stuff. So it's a question of the democratic institution that you are in. We have democracy. People have the right to criticize anybody. You hear people say things about the president. If it's not legal, they can be taken on. But they say things that traditionally we shouldn't be saying to people about people, but we say it here in Ghana. We say it. People say they've caused somebody to have stroke, they're killing people. They say all kinds of things on radio. But it comes down to the radio station or the TV station, the platform on which they make those pronouncements. If it's an illegal matter, the courts are there to deal with it. And usually they hold the media platform along with them. I can't readily think of a case where I can say to situate what you're asking for. But I guess discussions are going on, because when citizens complain, as you're doing, that what we are hearing on our airwaves and we are watching on TV and all that, it's not the right thing. We don't want our kids to be exposed to some of these pronouncements, and you're calling on the authorities to act. They will act. It's a matter of parliament, our MPs taking your sentiments, going for a bill that will deal with some of these excesses. But as again, I say, the freedom of expression thing is something that keeps us very tight, because you have foreign partners who are bringing you funds for your development, and they believe in freedom of speech. So that if somebody insults the president, they believe that the president has just spoken his mind. Don't attack him. So somebody can be on radio station in the afternoon, morning, and rain insults on the president of the land. Not this president, the previous president, all of them. And then we keep going, So if the president were to act, then they'll say, hey, he's a dictator. I'll tell you one example. It was in the era of J.J. Rawlings, because he's not here, so I can speak about him. And a friend of mine, Odate Wellington, he used to be a panelist on TV to discuss, newspaper review and stuff like that. And there was a story published by, I think, Times or Graphic, one of them, Graphic. Rawlings had gone to some, I think, the Burahafo areas, and there were issues that people were complaining about. And you know how Rawlings was at the time. He is very practical. He could just do anything. He knelt down and said he was begging the citizens for any wrongs that his government people had committed. So the Rawlings in a picture kneeling down was published in the papers on the morning show, GTV. And Odate Wellington said it, sorry, it was a lawyer, and he said, Rawlings is a con man. He's conning them. He's a con man. Just that, con man. He left the station, went to Chronicle. Before they could say Jack, a battalion of army officers were there. They handcuffed this guy. His only crime was saying that the president was a con man. He was handcuffed, and taken to cell. It became a news item all over. So that, people don't want that. Because if I am a president, I can do that to you. If you go and say that me, the president, I am the devil, and I am also doing galamsey, and I know you are, I don't like it, I'll come and catch you and put you in cell that you say I'm doing galamsey, prove it to me. But people say that the president is behind galamsey. They say it. So we all live in a society where we say we want the rule of law, and the rule of law must, have its way. And sometimes tendency is there that we should deal with them, but instead that you have to go to the courts, and then NMC, and then the market comes in, truly. Because I know for a fact that at Joy, where I used to be, the CEO will tell you that if you cause the station to incur any fines, any huge debt, it will be on you. So you, the person reporting, you are careful that you don't overstep your line. You have to be careful, cross-check your fact, get your facts right before you put it out there. There was this story about a minister who had cash under her bed and all that. The media followed the story. They published it out. It was very embarrassing. It was very hurtful. In another regime, nobody could have done that. Nobody could have done that. But in a democracy, people can do that, and the woman will have to come and defend herself. So that is the freedom we are enjoying, but it comes at a price. If you're a leader, people can criticize you harshly, and all you can do is to react to it, or if you're hurt, you go to court. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Qualified misinformation and disinformation, because I teach critical thinking here. So my question is, what recommendation or advice would you give to media houses describing Dr. Kesel Atufosi as majority leader or minority leader, and also describing Afenyomakins as majority leader or minority leader, especially in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling and then the proceedings of Parliament? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That is a very smart question. And it tells you that people actually listen and they also evaluate. Yes, I also listened to the reports, and I thought it was funny because, sometimes the media, they feed on sensational stuff, because it's exciting to say that Afenyomakin, who was known to be the majority leader, suddenly was the minority leader, and Atufosi Forsen was now the majority. They're playing on that. That's why Afenyomakin took on the Joy Reporter when they went for the press conference. I think we are taught in journalism with the media law that when in doubt, you check and you cross-check, because you cannot go wrong if you get your source right. The Supreme Court had issued a ruling stopping the Speaker from what it had ruled in Parliament. Now, we all know that if the Speaker's ruling had stayed, then the majority would have swung back to the NDC side. But at the time that we're speaking, that development had been stayed, had been stalled, if you like. All right? So this is where the good journalists can show that they have a full understanding of the situation. But as it turned out, they were caught in between saying, well, whether it's the majority or it's a minority. They were confused. But a few of them got it right, though. Some of them did say that, well, if you follow what the Supreme Court says, then you cannot say that until the case has been ruled on by the Supreme Court, you cannot say that the majority has turned to the opposition side. So if you ask me what I can say to them, it's again comes back to the training that institutions, media organizations must have for their practitioners. There are very good stations or radio stations and newspaper houses who train their reporters very well in media law to understand some of these things. In our time, you call a lawyer on the site. You won't call the lawyer on air and speak to him and ask him. You call the person as part of your production and seek legal knowledge. What do we say about this situation? How do you refer to this person? The lawyers will advise you. But my brother, you know that even the lawyers were confused as well. A lawyer will say, this ruling by the Supreme Court is wrong, and another will say it is right. So there was confusion out there. And from my perspective, I just took it that the reporters got it wrong. But where were they going to get information from? The lawyers themselves were confused. I have lawyers on a platform who were arguing. One said the Speaker was right, and the court cannot interfere with the parliamentary proceedings because of the separation of the three arms of government. You cannot interfere in one arm's activities. Some were saying no, the rule of law prevails. Supreme Court is the one that determines what is law. So it becomes a debate where you stand or how you see it. And again, this just happened as a development that will soon be dealt with. So maybe if a few reporters got it wrong, it is down to their inability to really critically assess the situation and know how to report it. It's a fault in them. It's a lesson that they will pick going forward. Because my team, for example, we were careful. Because of GNA, our stories go to other media houses and international partners. So you're very careful how to pick your words, how to attribute certain things. If you're in doubt, you must cross-check and cross-check and cross-check before you get it right. So it comes back to the training they need and how to be very careful that they avoid the landmines or the legal landmines. That's all we say. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Practicing lawyers, we are always taught that when a decision is made by a court of competent jurisdiction, you may agree or disagree with the decision. But whether you agree or disagree, whether it is patently wrong or factually wrong, or even an error in law has been made, you are bound by the decision. So you would realize that the lawyers will say, speaker was wrong, this one was right, and all that. But ultimately, irrespective of whichever opinion they have, they say, well, the Supreme Court has spoken, and we are bound by it, because the courts have their own way of reviewing their decisions. So even a Supreme Court decision can be reviewed, and they will get an opportunity to correct it if there is indeed an error that has been committed. But I think that let's be careful to criminalize free speech. You may not know the consequences of criminalizing free speech. If you criminalize free speech, it means that you are putting the executive arm of government at an apex to regulate free speech. The next moment the government is doing something you don't like, you can't talk. And that is dangerous. But of course, the laws have its own way of regulating matters of defamation and all that. So the guest speaker was talking about you have to go and prove that you have indeed been defamed. He made a lot of comments about that. And I tell you what, there is what we call elements of defamation. So it's not everything that you run to court, I've been defamed, I've been defamed. I've had clients come to me that, oh, I have been defamed. But when I match the words against the elements, you realize that this one, it won't fly. So yes, there are rules and regulations governing speech. You cannot just put anything out there in the public domain. And for all of us here, even electronic communication, if you read section 76 of Act 775, it will tell you that when you are sharing information, so share as received, shared by this number of people, if the information you are sharing turns out to be fake and it can injure somebody else, you can be arrested. You can serve a fine of imprisonment, or you can pay a fine, or both. What it means is that it's not everything that you see in a group that you share. Some of us, we have found everything you will share. If it is traced to you as the one forwarding, it's not the originator, the person who is even spreading, you are broadcasting, you are publishing it, you are also committing an offense. That brings me back to educating our students. This is an education platform. And for me, if you uphold ethical values yourself and regulate yourself, truth is always a defense. When in doubt, check and cross-check. The speaker said that. But I also say that indeed, whenever you find yourself, you are creating a brand for yourself. You haven't even worked before. You are creating a brand. Let the truth and the meticulousness with which you carry about your profession guide you. If you are found to be publishing false things, you will not get a job. Nobody will be prepared to hire you. So I think that let's take that responsibility on ourselves and always endeavor to do the right thing. Thank you very much.